topic is coset. Coset is, suppose we have a group G and H is a subgroup of G. Then the subset A composition H such that H belongs to capital H is called a coset of H in G, where A belongs to G. That means you take one fixed element A belongs to the group G, then find out A composition H for all H belongs to capital H. Then the collection of elements A composition H such that H belongs to capital H is said to be A coset of H in G. Similarly, you can get another coset like B composition H such that H belongs to H. Then this coset is named as AH, A capital H. This coset will be named as B capital H or BH. Similarly, for another element C belongs to G, you can get another coset C composition H such that H belongs to capital H. This is said to be CH. So AH, BH, CH and all the other elements taking from G, these all are cosets. Rather, they are said to be left cosets of H in G, where G is the group and H is a subgroup of G. Similarly, you can define HA. This will be H composition A such that H belongs to capital H. This is said to be a right coset. Here we are composing the element from the right. So this is why it is said to be a right coset of H in G. Similarly, you can define HB, HC and so on. Okay, this is the definition of coset. For example, we can take G equals Z. Obviously, with respect to plus, it's a group we know, and H equals suppose 3Z, comma plus. It is a subgroup of G. Now, how we can define the left cosets? At first, 0H, that means 0 composition H such that H belongs to capital H, right? Now composition here is the plus, that is 0 plus the elements of H such that H belongs to capital H means 3Z. So it will become 0 plus 3, comma 0 plus 6, comma 0 plus 9 and so on. That is ultimately 3, 6, 9, so on. And the minus elements also. That means it will become 3Z. This is one coset. Okay. We can get another coset by 1H. 1H means 1 composition H such that H belongs to capital H. That is 1 composition here is plus H such that H belongs to capital H means 3Z. So it will become 1 plus 3, then 1 plus 6, 1 plus 9 and so on. That means 3K plus 1 type of elements such that K belongs to Z. That one. This is another example of a coset of H in G. Okay, this is how we define cosets. Now we have few properties of coset. Number 1. Number 1, when H belongs to capital H, HH, this coset will be equals to H. How? The proof is very easy. Let's take some P belongs to HH. That means P can be written as HH1 for some H1 belongs to H. Now H belongs to H, H1 belongs to H. And H1, H is a subgroup. That means their composition will also belongs to H. That is P belongs to H. So from there we can write HH is a subset of H. Next, let some Q belongs to H. Now H belongs to H. That means there exists some X belongs to H such that Q equals HX. We can write this. That is H belongs to capital H and small x also belongs to capital H. That means this whole thing HX belongs to HH. Okay, so H subset of HH, that is H equals HH. So whenever that element A, B, C, D, whatever it is, belongs to H, that means this whole thing will become H itself. That is the subgroup itself. Next property is two cosets are either identical or disjoint. Two cosets are either identical or disjoint. Okay, and how will we prove it? Suppose we take two cosets AH comma BH. Let us choose their intersection is not equal to phi. Then what we have to prove? They are identical. That means AH equals BH. Let's try to prove it. Their intersection is not equal to phi. That means there exists some element. Let P belongs to their intersection. Now P belongs to AH. That means P is equals to some H1 for some A H1 belongs to H, and P belongs to BH also. That means P equals B H2 for some H2 belongs to capital H. Now both are same, this and this taking the same value P. So AH1 equals BH2. Now from there we can write A equals, just composing by H1 inverse from the right, we will get BH2 H1 inverse, and B equals, we are composing H2 inverse from the right, so we will get A H1 H2 inverse. So getting the value of A and B. Now let some X belongs to AH. Okay, then X will be equals AH3 for some H3 belongs to capital H. It will be of the form. Now putting the value of A means that value BH2 H1 inverse H3. Now this whole thing belongs to capital H. All are the elements of H. So this whole thing belongs to BH. Okay, so we started with X belongs to AH, we ended at X belongs to BH. That is AH is a subset of BH. Similarly, let some Y belongs to BH. That means Y will be some BH4 for some H4 belongs to capital H. Now putting the value of B, AH1 H2 inverse H4. Now this quantity is an element of capital H because all are the elements of capital H. So this belongs to AH. We started with Y belongs to BH, we ended at Y belongs to AH. That is BH is a subset of AH. Now take this line and this line. What we can conclude? AH equals BH. So from there we can write so cosets are either identical or disjoint. I mean they have identical means they are same, or disjoint means they have no common element. It doesn't possible that they have few common elements, few are the other elements. No, it is not possible. Either they are same or there is nothing common. Now another property, two left cosets or two cosets have same number of elements. It is quite clear from the previous theorem, as they are identical or disjoint, they always have same number of elements. Now moving to Lagrange's theorem. It states that the order of every subgroup of a finite group G is a divisor of the order of G. the order of every subgroup of a finite group G is a divisor of the order of G. That means suppose we have a finite group G, its order is suppose n, then if we got one subgroup H of G, its order is suppose m, then m will divide n. That means it has subgroups of orders which are divisors of n. Suppose n equals to 6, that means m could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3, it could be 6, but not 4, not 5. Okay, because the order of the subgroup should always divide the order of the group for a finite group, obviously. So this is the Lagrange's theorem. Now using that theorem we can solve few examples. Like another very important theory is, theory not actually example, is that every group of prime order is cyclic. Every group of prime order is cyclic. Now using this one we can solve few examples. Number 1, every group of order less than 6 is commutative. Every group of order less than 6 is commutative. So less than 6, that means what could be its orders? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now if its order is 1, that means this is only the singleton element E. This is obviously commutative because there is nothing to be not commutative, only the elements is E, which is the identity element, obviously commutative. Now if its order is 2, that means it's a prime number, right? So by the previous theorem we can say it's a cyclic group, and we all know cyclic group means it's a commutative group. So it's okay for 2. Similarly, if its order is 3, 3 is also a prime number, that means it will also be a cyclic group, that is it will be a commutative group. Similarly for 5 also, if it's 5 prime number, cyclic number, cyclic group, that means it will become commutative. Now the problem creates for 4 only. So if the order of the group is 4, that means what could be the order of the subgroups? It could be 1, 2, 4, because the divisors of 4 we have to consider the divisors of 4. Now if it has a subgroup of order 4, it will be generated by some elements of order 4. That means it will become a cyclic group. So there is nothing to prove. If it has an element of order 4, it will generate that group G. Now if it has all the elements are of order 1, that means it will be a singleton group E. So then there is also nothing to prove. Now if there is a subgroup of order 2, that means each non-identity element of that group is of order 2. Each non-identity element is of order 2. That means what we can say, order of A equals 2 when A not equal to E, that means A square equals C, so A equals A inverse. When A equals A inverse, A composition B can be written as A inverse composition B inverse, that means BOA its whole inverse. Now it inverse means the single general element, that is BOA, that is AOB equals BOA, that means the group is commutative. So in any case where the order of the group is less than 6, it will become commutative. Next example, every proper subgroup of a group of order 6 is cyclic. every proper subgroup of a group of order 6 is cyclic. Suppose we have a group G of order 6. Now what could be the subgroups order of G? It could be 1, 2, 3, 6, right? Now according to the question, it is a proper subgroup. That means it cannot be cannot be 6, because otherwise it will become improper subgroup. So the possibilities are 1, 2, 3. Now if it's 1, that means it is singleton set E. So then there is nothing to prove. It is obviously cyclic. Now if it is true 2, that means it's a prime number. So cyclic obviously. If it is 3, this is also a prime number. That means always cyclic. So in any case, a proper subgroup of a group of order 6 is always cyclic. And we can prove it by using Lagrange's theorem. And the last theorem is Fermat's theorem. Here P be any prime number and A be any integer such that P is not a divisor of A. Okay, we have chosen P and A in such a way that P is a prime number and P is not a divisor of A. A be any integer. Then A to the power P minus 1 will be congruent to 1 modulo P. That means A to the power P minus 1 is divisible by P. This is called Fermat's theorem. We can also prove it by applying Lagrange's theorem.